I'm Molly Kirschenbaum, and if you would like to hear a little more about my production, Hot, please listen to the following conversation. I think I fell in love with theater and had to be part of the theater world when I was like 10. I did theater summer camp, and I did a production of Oklahoma. And my mom, right before the auditions, and I just kind of did it for fun. And right before the audition, my mom said, "Sweetheart, you're going to get the ensemble. Don't worry about it. Like, everyone gets the ensemble. It's your first show." And then out of pure spite, I went in and I said, "I have to get the lead just to show my mom." And I killed the audition at children's summer camp. So yeah, I'd say my love for theater began with spite and anger and sort of manifested into a love. And I ended up really, I never thought I'd pursue theater as a career or as any real, I believed the brainwashing from my very Jewish family that is not really a career. And and then when I was living in New York, when I was in college, I was working as a musician and realized that a lot of the concerts, a lot of the gigs I was doing were starting to feel less like concerts and more like plays. I was craving more story to them and I wanted to talk and not just play music, but nobody really did that in the sort of music scene I was in. And I was like, what am I trying to do? And I ended up then going to theater school as a playwright. And that is when I would say my actual love for it began, not just fueled by a desire to be the center of attention. I actually think my parents are both writers. My mom is a storyteller and performer. My dad, he passed away many years ago, but he was a television writer. Um, and it was never an option in my house to be a bad writer. That was like probably the most embarrassing thing I could ever do. If my essays from school came back and they didn't make sense, that was like a huge embarrassment. I never let that happen. But I think that I never really thought of myself as being a writer for a long time until I started writing songs. Um, and I started writing music back before college when I was still in LA. And when my dad passed away, that's when I got really deeply into songwriting, and it was very therapeutic. And I think it really, in like that super corny classic way, just gave me somewhere to put a lot of feelings that a 14-year-old person like doesn't really know how to handle and doesn't really know how to talk about with other, most 14-year-olds are not thinking a lot about the stages of grief. So writing music, I think, is when it became an obsession. I wrote songs. I wrote a song every day for years of my teenage life. Well, a lot of my work, I mean, even this show is a lot about, I think, I'm non-binary, I'm trans, and I lost my dad at a young age. And those are sort of two things that are really hard to talk about before you know how to talk about them. And something I've always been very acutely aware of, those are not always comfortable topics to other people. And a way that I think I personally, and probably a lot of people, have learned to sort of deal with that is make it funny and make jokes about it. And there's something really, really therapeutic to me specifically about comedy. I think that it helps me take my own life less seriously. It helps me communicate with other people about things that really suck to talk about. Um, and and it also gives, I think it writing plays and writing music, or writing stuff to be performed, for me gives me a very structured, clear way to express something that I feel like if I'm just in conversation with someone, I'm like at a total. I mean, how do you talk about those things in a conversation? It's really, at least for me, it's very uncomfortable. And having some sort of story, building some sort of structure, and being able to kind of mask that in humor or in song, yeah, it gives like a kind of clearer mode of communication about those things, which is very, very therapeutic. Well, I have to say, I have huge imposter syndrome talking about theater because I really consider myself like, or in my brain, I think of myself as being like a performer first, maybe. But I guess like that is the secret of theater, is like it's live performance. Um, Things can go horribly detrimentally wrong in theater in a way that like they can't in film because it's, you know, already like it's cut, it's finished, the cut is finished. And theater, like every single time you get up there, like you could totally botch the whole fucking thing. It could be so embarrassing. And I really like that about live performance. I think there's something about it. Like I never in my life would ever go skydiving, but that same kind of adrenaline rush that I imagine people get from like life-threatening activities, I get from getting on stage because I, you know, hate to be in danger. So I think for a performer and for the person on stage, it's really, really vulnerable. It's a really large risk. And then you get to feel really proud of yourself afterward for taking such a big risk. And you also get to look at people in the face when you are talking to them, but from a really different perspective than if you're in a conversation. I think that I'm in some ways, a very different person when I'm performing, and even like right now, giving an interview than I am when I'm like by myself. So I think that's what's so special about live performance to me from like a performing perspective. And then from an audience perspective, like, you know, going to see live anything with a friend or like, you know, with a group of people, like those are the shows that I talk about. I don't usually have like crazy memories from going to see movies with friends. I usually have crazy stories from like crazy shows, also bad shows. I love going to see bad shows. Like there's something so fun about being in the audience and being like, this is like a real life experience that I just had. Which is, yeah, it's just, it feels very different. It's much more vulnerable. It's much more like risky, I think. And I think that's what makes it really, really fun. I feel like I don't know what my process is half the time. Well, okay, I think my process for most of my life has actually been trying stuff out on stage. Like I write plays and I love to write scripts. But most of the stuff I write, if I'm like, I'm gonna write a play, is not usually my like one person stuff. It's usually more like I just finished writing a musical for a kids theater program that I wrote with like my writing partners. So that was really fun. That process is much more like feels much more like academic to me, or like at least you know, I start with like an outline and what's the story and what are the beats and whatever. For my live stuff, I more develop what I say and do while on stage. I have, you know, tragically, I have a small improv background, which is so embarrassing to say. But I really love figuring stuff out in the moment. I find myself coming up with good ideas, usually when I'm on stage. And the songwriting process, I usually just sort of write about, you know, kind of freehand write a lot about whatever I'm experiencing at the time and sit down with my keyboard or my computer and just sort of hack away at it until something comes out. I feel I have a very unglamorous process. I think it's a lot of trying a lot of shit and seeing what sticks. And usually I can tell what sticks through if I'm laughing or crying while making it, or if it's making other people laugh or cry on stage. That's usually where I'm like, that's something I'm gonna I'll keep that. Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error, my process. Very, very messy, I think. I've known about the Fringe in general for like my whole life. My mom's in theater, my dad was a writer. And this last year and a half, like I said, I really wanted to put this work in the Hollywood Fringe. Because it seemed like a really genuinely kind, caring community where I could try out a lot of stuff I'm very nervous about. There's no real like fancy reason. It's a really nice group of people. I've enjoyed meeting like everyone that I've met thus far. And I really wanted to, this is the first time I've sort of written this much stuff or like had this many sort of jokes and songs and bits that came from sitting in my bedroom and not working it out in front of people. So I really wanted, like, you know, it's a lot more intimidating, I think, to go into, especially in LA, like there's almost no theater scene here. So to just go out into the world and just start gigging a lot. I have a lot of like performance anxiety now because I haven't done it in so long. So I really wanted to find like a sort of landing pad. And this seemed like maybe the least pretentious community I sort of found in a really nice way. Yeah, I mean, I heard about Asylum literally through the Fringe website, but then I was looking them up and I was like, oh, like I literally have heard of this theater company before. My mom had heard of them. And I, you know, sort of looked at their page. I went and I toured the space at Stephanie Feury, and Matthew Quinn is the main guy I've talked to, and then his partner there, Berta, and they're like true doing it for the love of it theater people and performance people. And that, you know, like LA, I'm like, I feel like anyone who lives in LA, I'm from LA, I grew up here, like there's a lot of people that do a lot of things, you know, to get famous and to like, you know, there's I don't know, there's a lot of bullshit. And Matthew was just really, really nice. Berta's really, really kind. And I was just really struck by, you know, we talked a lot about where I was like, this is a workshop kind of for me. Like it is a show. I take it very seriously, but this is, I'm workshopping all new material. I'm workshopping all new songs. I feel like I'm at kind of the beginning of a process in a lot of ways, and at the end of the process too. And Matt was just so understanding about that and really encouraged me to do it. And I really appreciate that sort of just humble passion for it. It really struck me. The inspiration came from, honestly, I think it really came from being alone for such a long time and desperately, you know, I have this song in it called Put Down Your Phone and Look at Me, and I have another song called Famous, and I found myself, you know, like I'm probably most comfortable on stage, even though it's something that makes me really nervous when I don't, you know, do it for a while, but I feel able to be such a confident side of myself on stage. And this last 2 years was like just mental spiral zone for like months and months and months. And I also, you know, being alone so much, I was also experiencing a lot of gender dysphoria. I had a lot of time to just like think about stuff, which I think, you know, any of us who are lucky enough to be healthy over the last 2 years, like had a lot of time to sit and think. And I found myself thinking a lot about gender. I found myself missing being on stage. And also like regressing to my childhood self and thinking about growing up and growing up a girl, quote unquote, which never felt right. And I just sort of started writing songs about a lot of that. And it sort of grew into, you know, again, it wasn't like I was like, this is the story I want to tell. Here's what it is beat by beat. It was more like songs started coming out of that. little stories, little bits of stuff where I was like, I haven't done anything about this yet. I want to put this together. This feels relevant. And I think I had to write it because I think I realized a really big part of my life has been obviously performing, and that's been very empowering. But I also realized how much I've used performance as a mask to sort of disguise, grieving, depression, gender dysphoria, transness. Like I've spent a lot of time performing my way out of those things. And this show, I think, is a lot about that, and a lot to me about how there's a lot of huge similarities for me, like between the period of my life where I was really dealing with grief. I'm always dealing with grief. And also like grieving my former self and myself that my dad knew when I was a child, how I'm never going to be anyone's, daughter exactly. I'm not that person. And yeah, it was just sort of a huge kind of, oh shit, like this is synthesizing a lot of weird things from my life that never felt connected and suddenly really do when I sit down and think about it. So I really had to, I think, get that out. And I had to get that out in a way that was funny because it felt like something that was so, in some moments, so horribly sad. That again, I was like, I can't, like, I don't want to just sit up. I feel like I was like, if I make something sad, I'm just gonna cry in front of people, and that's like not, comfortable to me. And I have a whole song about that. So yeah, I was like, I want to make something funny, and kind of true to my voice about all those things. The arc, it's not a narrative piece exactly, so it's a little hard to explain the exact arc, but the arc of the show, what it really is me exploring this sort of character of beautiful woman that I realized I'd been playing my whole life, and like perfect ideal woman. That was sort of like what I was always striving to be, meaning beautiful, sexually appealing to men, not sad about existential, grief and fears in the world. Very chill, like a chill, cool girl. And so I think this story is me unpacking that kind of from beginning. Sort of the first lens I started thinking about it through was dating, and how for a long time I didn't come out to the people I was dating or hooking up with as trans, because I was very afraid to do that, even though I told my friends. But I was like, people won't be attracted to me if they know that I'm non-binary. That'll be something they think is unattractive. So kind of unpacking that, and then that leading me into unpacking, okay, where did I get that from? Like sort of thinking about like my parents and my family upbringing, and then into, what is that need that we all have to be perfect for other people and be attractive for them? Why do we care so much about that? And how is that really counterproductive? But also, how is that really fun when you succeed at it and you convince people you're fine and perfect? Like, amazing feeling, So, yeah, sort of unpacking that kind of through text and songs, is the sort of format of the production. It's me and then my wonderful music producer, Adam Shell. We've been working together on the album for like 7 months almost at this point, which is awesome. And so yeah, so both of us on stage. He plays keys and runs a lot of the sound, and I, perform these songs. We do the songs together, and it's sort of threaded together with, I guess, what I would probably classify as something akin to stand-up, or storytelling. I think something that I really care about the audience getting out of this play, and this is something I say really cautiously, but that I feel like I've been pressured a lot in the last few years of my life since coming out to make really poignant trans work. I feel like that's a lot of what people want to see from trans artists is like, tell me about how hard it is to be trans and give me something so I like empathize or sympathize with the trans experience. And actually, on the flip side, I feel like what I actually want people to get from this show is that a lot of the feelings are actually just really universally human, like fearing people finding out that you're not as good as you are, hiding who you are, being unsure if your type of beauty is socially relevant or acceptable or good enough. Um, and sort of this idea of like everybody's wearing a mask, no matter what your situation is. And the trans experience is very unique, and I don't ever want to take away from that because there are aspects of that, like gender dysphoria, and specifically if you're a trans person of color, like the violence that trans people of color experience is not, comparable, really to anything else. But there are a lot of aspects of that are universally human that I think point to, the issue is not elevating trans voices. The issue is dismantling our idea of gender as a culture, and saying, why are we all performing these things? There are plenty of cisgender people out there, cisgender men that are afraid of showing femininity, and cisgender women that are afraid of showing masculinity. It's all this whole idea of gender and this whole idea of perfection, and of there being a right way to be and a socially sought after way to be, that is the myth. That's the thing to dismantle, because once you start picking apart all those sort of capitalist, racist, sexist, gendered expectations of people, this is like kind of corny town, but like you just have a lot of souls and bodies. And I think that, there's a lot of ways in which cisgender people are not free within this kind of gendered structure. And it's not just trans and non-binary people that are fighting to get out of that. It's not helping any of us. And I think having sort of these expectations, and we grow up as children thinking that just, a lot of us just being ourselves is never going to be good enough. And what are the beauty products we need to buy to get better? And what emotions do we need to not show other people, so we can get better and be better. People should come to my play because it's fun. I'm going to say, I think something I really value in performance is fun. It's not a sob story. There's one kind of emotional song in it that I love, but I think there's something really fun about emotional stuff too. And yeah, it's a fun piece that I think really pokes a lot of fun at the idea of gender and what the hell are we all doing living in this weird fake world we've made for ourselves. None of that's real. And we don't have to subscribe to that. And we can totally reimagine that for ourselves and wear drag and dance around and shake our tits while doing it. Ironically, of course. I mean, the number one thing, and it is really simple, the number one thing I'm always looking for is to make myself laugh. I think that if I'm able to laugh, that means it's working. I think a lot of this show is about me laughing at myself, but not in like a self-deprecating way, in a like self-enjoying way. And I think if I can have a few moments during the show where I can zoom out and be like, oh my God, Molly, what the hell are you doing? I've totally succeeded. And then I think the other thing that I'm really hoping for is to feel like I made something enjoyable about my experience, something that hopefully people can see very specific parts of me that make them see very specific parts of themselves in a way that is, you know, celebratory and hopefully self-questioning, and make people, you know, I'm hoping to, yeah, to really not take myself too seriously, and encourage others to do the same. It is important for people to go to the Fringe because, I mean, supporting independent artists is everything. Right now, it's literally everything. Everyone who's doing this festival is putting their own money into it, has been working on it for months. There are people here that have had these shows, you know, they've been developing them for years. People are working their asses off, and there's some really, really great stuff happening. There's also a lot of queer art being made this year, in particular at Asylum, a lot of queer playwrights and performers, which rocks. A lot of amazing art by POC artists. And again, independent POC artists, independent queer artists. Like, you know, every year we get like a handful of big budget projects that are like, you know, really rocking about the queer experience or about the Black experience or about like women's experience, POC experience in general by POC, but like to see those are huge funded, you know what I mean? Like huge movies, you know, big musicals and stuff. That stuff is amazing to go see, but it is so important to also put money toward really, you know, young people, independent people, broke people. There's just really special stuff that comes out of that. And there's a lot of really great projects this year. I'm like fully freaked out. It's awesome. Yeah, I think events like this are really important because this, you know, this is going to be in 10 years. These are the artists you're going to be seeing, you know, like jump on this train now. Like this needs SoCal's support and LA's support, because also LA, like this is a very wealthy city. Like there are a lot of very wealthy people here, or at least very comfortable people here. And if you have the means to do so, you know, you have to give back to this particular world. Like independent young artists, broke artists, like people that are making work from the ground up. That's like grassroots work too. That's not censored by big media, and that's not, you know, influenced by giant producers with huge budgets that are usually billionaires that don't understand, have no idea, you know, they're in space, like they don't have any idea what's going on the ground. So yeah, I think it's beyond like a good thing to do. Like it's literally crucial, because we also deserve better art, you know, across the board in terms of what's available to the public. So if it's available to you and you have the means to go see it, you got to fund it. I think local theater, especially here in LA, is so important because, you know, like I said before, like there isn't a raging theater scene here. Um, so especially here, but in general, theater is, you know, people don't usually do theater like for the money. I think people usually do theater because they love it. It's not the most lucrative industry out there. Um, and so again, like the people that are doing it really are really there because they care about it and they're working really hard on these shows. Um, and I think that the live theater scene, it's very similar to how I feel with the live music scene and the live comedy scene. Like any underground local artists that you have, like that's the heart of your city. That's the community that is there to support. Giant, you know, blockbuster movies don't need your money. Those people do. And yeah, I think the theater scene and the live music scene in any city is like a lot of where that city's heart is. I think I feel really, really grateful that this is where I can put my time and energy right now. And I think that anyone who is able to make art right now is very lucky. And there's like just never been a more important time, like in my lifetime, certainly, than, this horrible pandemic situation has just been such total hell, continues to be total hell. Um, and my show is live streamed at this point. I'm not doing it in person anymore because of the Delta variant. Um, and I really think that that's very tough on artists, like virtual art. It's really exciting and it's also really hard. So, whether it's my show or it's any of the other shows that are happening, just like, I just want to tell people to really, really go invest in them, see the virtual shows, um, go in person if you feel safe to do so, but really, see the live streams. I think that this is for a lot of people the first opportunity they've had to do something in years. So I think everyone's like sort of manically excited about it. And I hope that the audience feels that way, because I would certainly describe my approach as pure mania. And I think that that's a good thing. I'm Molly Kirschenbaum. I hope you enjoyed this little conversation about my show, Hot. And if you would like to come see it, it'll be streaming from the Hollywood Fringe website.